Coach Longo has mentioned once or twice is just trying to fit the personnel to the scheme. Like, what's your perspective on the challenge that it's been once the season has started to fit your scheme to what is the strengths of these players?
So you mean what Coach Fickle mentioned is what you're saying?
What's up, Longo?
No, I'm sorry. Just take that out of the audio.
It's a recognition.
So one, it's our scheme, first of all. But secondly, it's been interesting because you implement the offense in the off season and you go through the summer, and we felt like we're going to let I've said this a number of times, you're going to let the talent dictate where you go with the offense, and so we start heading down a certain path. You learn the character of the team and what our strengths are, and then we hit our first obstacle, which was the loss of Ches Malusi, who arguably was our most explosive player, and so you got to regroup, and Braylon has to shoulder more of the reps and more of the run responsibility. And Jackson Akers done a great job stepping in and saving or covering some of those reps, but he obviously has not played as much as we were playing Ches from a percentage standpoint. So you regroup after that, and I think then we get hit again. So the loss of Tanner Mordecai obviously is a huge loss, and Braden has done a good job stepping in and being the next guy up. And that's the attitude right now. So we're trying to figure out how our people plug into the system. I think we know that, but we've had two major changes. The road has changed twice already. So now I think hopefully that is the last major obstacle for the season, and we can start to settle in and get a feel for what we do well.
Historically, what position group has had the hardest time, but it takes the longest to adapt to your scheme? Has there been one? And I guess
not really.
Okay.
I think in the off season I talked about there's much more overlap for the offensive line. There's more overlap for the running backs. Typically, we're obviously doing more in the passing game than they have done in the past, but they're excited about doing that, and so I don't know that there's been some tremendous learning curve. I just, we have to get better playing together all the time. We've got to minimize our mistakes, and I think getting over the two obstacles that we've been through has been a major challenge for our guys, and we're getting ready for Ohio State right now, and we're going to do it with the people that we have.
If you just look at the numbers, you guys have done, I think you've been more efficient offensively in the second half of games than in the first half. Have you been able to figure out what's led to that?
I have, and it's not like we studied that, but I would say that our staff does a good job of making adjustments, and so things progress as you go through the game. And then the other part of it is just guys settling in, getting more comfortable with what the defense is doing. I would attribute probably those two things to trending in a better direction as the game goes on.
You obviously got some help, but what did Braden just show you in that final drive against Illinois?
So I will tell you this: Braden showed us a lot in the final drive. He graded out. We graded him out for the game, and he did a good job. He graded out fairly well, especially for a freshman who's starting his first college football game. But interestingly enough, he graded out at the end of the first half on that final drive, and at the end of the game on the final drive, he graded out as a 91. So in the two biggest drives of each half, he performed the best. And he also had a lot of support, right? So the offensive line protected for him. The receivers made plays in both of those drives, and obviously so did Braylon Allen. And so both of those drives are a product of the entire offensive unit, but you need your quarterback playing well in 2-minute scenarios, and he did that in both 2-minute scenarios, against Illinois.
No, I know obviously there's probably examples on both sides when it is working and it's not, but from a general sense, do you feel like your receivers are getting the separation that you anticipated, or is that still kind of a work in progress for them?
I think that it is a work in progress, but I think we're getting better. I think we're trending in the right direction. And let me just interject this. I would say that when you're building something like this, you're building for consistent success over the long haul, and that takes some time, right? And so we want to get to a point where we're winning consistently, right? And we're doing it with the talent dictating the direction that we're going. And so there's no stopgap answers and no shortcuts. If when you get to where you want to be, you want to stay there. And I think that's the old adage is just keep your nose to the grindstone, and you got to plug the next man in. You don't have a choice. You got to plug the next guy in, and you got to keep playing. And we make some adjustments because the next guy sometimes is different from a talent standpoint, and so you're able to do more or less with a different guy, and that's the direction that you take the offense or the defense or the team in general. You know, when you have to change personnel.
From when you were hired, the expectations, outside expectations, are through the roof. And this is you're going to come in and light up the scoreboard, right?
Yeah.
You weren't exactly promoting that in any way, but you weren't tapping the brakes either. Internally, were you like, let's be realistic about what can be achieved in year one? Because as you mentioned, it's kind of this is a growing thing. This is not a.
So very honestly, I would say that whether there's a lot of hype or there's no hype or anything in between, it really doesn't change anything that we do. It doesn't change my mindset. My mindset is we're going to put it in. We're going to put it in with the people that we have. We're going to play to their strengths. You learn that your first year as you go through the season, and you build your offense, or you build your defense, or you build your team accordingly. And that process hasn't changed. And so, you know, right now we're trying to utilize the best that we have right now to go attack Ohio State, and do it by promoting the strengths of the guys that we have out on the field that are playing. And that won't change. And I know that's a boring answer, but I mean that won't change next week. That won't change in week 12, and that won't change next year or in the future.
I think you were asked before the season about being the only guy who signals into plays. And I know you're busy preparing for a game, but you know, there's talk about a certain program stealing signs or having a network to steal signs. Do you ever worry about that when you're signaling in? You know, whether someone can decipher what you're doing and get an advantage?
Not really. I really don't. I mean, there's a way that we signal.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a defense mechanism in there to manage that stuff if we didn't feel confident in it. We'd never had a problem with it before, so we're not worried about it now. We discuss it any week we feel like that issue comes up. Obviously, we're not going to go out there and do something we think is going to hurt our football team, so you take whatever measures you have to.
Say Phil, with someone like Will Pauling, who's been, you know, stepped up in the last 3 weeks with a number of receptions, a number of targets, especially on third down. On that third down, just what makes him such a target that can be gone, you know, can continue to go to in those situations to try to move the chains?
So the two things I would say: one, Will Pauling has been on the target list since the start of the season. He has definitely upped his game in the last few weeks. Love the direction that he's going. And you know, third down is a big down. And in some of those plays, he hasn't even been the primary target. The primary target's been covered, and then he has a great knack for getting open. He's talented. He's hard to stay with. He's a great change of direction guy. And so he has demonstrated that on big downs like that, he can create some separation, and he's become a really, I think, consistent and trustworthy target for the quarterbacks, and that's why his production is where it is right now.
I think on the outside, there's been some talk about those shotgun snaps and whether they're getting back to where they need to be quick enough. I don't know, how would you evaluate how Tanner's done back there?
So you'll see him after every practice working on it, you know, and I think you'll see a number of players on the field staying and working on things, and those are things that they're not exactly excelling at. The snaps were an issue earlier in the season. Every now and then we get one we don't want, right? And it is a concern, but I think it's being addressed by our staff, it's being addressed by me, it's being addressed by our centers, and it has gotten better. And I don't know that it, knock on wood, but I don't know that it's been a major problem the last couple of weeks, so hopefully that trend continues.
Does it affect the offense at all?
Early on it did. I mean, when Tanner Mordecai has to jump for a ball, that's not a good thing, right? You know, he ran a touchdown in that really should have been handed to Braylon Allen, but we had to retrieve the snap, and so, you know, he did what you're supposed to do, chase the run. That hasn't happened here in the more recent past. The last few games we've been better. Feel like he's improving, and that's all we can ask from him right now.
To kind of follow up on that, because when you're recruiting offensive linemen, very rarely are you recruiting a guy that's playing center in high school to then try to come play center in college. How difficult, in your experience, is developing that center when he gets to the college level, or how do you kind of evaluate how you can go about that?
Well, one of the things that Coach McNeil does is we snap 6 guys every day.
Oh wow.
And earlier I talked about us building for consistent success over the long haul in the future, right? So that's part of this process. That's just a small microcosm of what we're doing with the entire offensive unit. He snaps 6 guys every day, before and after practice, in an effort to start training some of those guys some of them do have snap experience, and those are obviously the guys playing center. But a full year under their belt of snapping, if we have to call on one of them to be a center because of his physical makeup and his intelligence, because you need that at that position.
Speaking of the offensive line, there's been a lot of shuffling, at the guard spots, obviously. Is continuity with a starting 5 on the offensive line something you seek, or does it not matter to you as long as you're getting the production that you need?
So it's not we haven't shuffled for continuity. We're shuffling because we like the 3 guards that we have, and so we roll through those guys and we play them. Part of it is you want to keep guys fresh. We roll through 3 wideouts. We roll through 2 slots. When we had Ches here, we were rolling through 2 backs more. We utilized 3 tight ends. And the philosophy is no different on the offensive line. That's not to say that your front 5 needing continuity is not important. It certainly is.
Phil, are you generally a pretty patient person? And I ask that because you're talking about building, right? And I think that's important as a coach. But this is a world where everybody wants everything right now. And so how do you balance that as a coach?
I'd say probably my worst trait in the past has been my lack of patience. 12 years ago, I started having kids with my wife. Right, we got 4 now. They made me a much more patient person. But I think in terms of this process, you have to be. You don't win a national championship day 1, right? We're building as Coach Fickle wants us to build it, and we're working to get to a certain point so that when we get there, we can stay there. And I like where we're headed. We'd like to have some better execution. I challenge myself to do a better job every day, but we are moving in the right direction, and we have some great kids and we have some good athletes. Probably for me, the thing that I am most hopeful for is that we stay healthy for the rest of the season.
Let's do one more.
Talking about the slot position, last year you had an electric guy in Josh Downs with a similar profile to Will Pauling. Did that make the transition easier, knowing the similarity in personnel and highlighting the slot position maybe more when you got here?
I think just the offense in general on the passing game side of it is flexible enough so that when you have an explosive slot receiver, you can definitely feature him. In the past, as you will see here at some point, you'll have an explosive wide receiver that you can focus on. It just, again, it is, as much as it sounds like rhetoric, you let the talent take you where you're going. You target the better people. This isn't rocket science. And Will early on showed that he can be a playmaker, which is why I made the comment about slot receivers in the offense. We've had a lot of success with those guys, and now you're starting to see that heat up with Will. As he starts attracting double coverage and more attention, it's going to isolate wide receivers, and I would think you'd start to see some of our guys take advantage of those one-on-one options too.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Phil.